folks. Are we straight in there? All right, busy day in New York City courtroom. The Jonathan Majors assault trial. They released the video, the surveillance video, where Majors was seen leaving the vehicle and being chased by his ex-girlfriend. Also, they released, so of course, remember, they were in a car where he was on the phone. She saw a message, snatched the phone from him. There was an altercation in the car. He then gets out of the car and she chases him as he's getting out of that vehicle. Reporter Lauren Victoria Burke, she's been in the courtroom this week, joins us right now. Lauren, your assessment of what's been happening in this trial. We see this video here again where he's fleeing the car. She chases after him. She alleges that he hit her in the vehicle, but the driver said that was not the case, that she was the one who was the aggressor.
Yeah, and there's a lot of bits and pieces of evidence that indicate that effectively what happened here is that they broke up. They broke up primarily, it looks like, because there was a text message that came in apparently from another woman, and she flipped out. And as you can see from the video, they had some altercation in a car in which he tried to snatch a phone out of her hand, and then she bailed from the car. He bailed from the car, and then you see Jonathan Majors on video, on a surveillance video. Most of New York City has police surveillance cameras. You see Jonathan Majors running down the street. You see Grace Jabbari running after him down the street, which I would think would make her the aggressor. There are also things going on in the courtroom that would indicate that the judge is not particularly wanting certain any evidence to come into play that would in any way implicate his ex-girlfriend in some of the activity that may have been violent. There was a police detective, a New York City police detective, on the stand today that the defense had called, but really they wouldn't, the judge would really not allow a lot of his testimony to happen. He had processed the complaint from Mr. Majors with regard to an alleged assault from his ex-girlfriend, and really we couldn't hear any of that evidence or any of that testimony from the police detective because the judge blocked it and basically sustained all of the objections from the prosecution's office. And so I think that, it's safe to say, watching this close up for the last 2 days, that if Jonathan Majors' name was Joe Smith, we would not have this case in play. It would appear that he snatched a phone out of his girlfriend's hand, and somehow we're in court with a trial where he is charged with 4 counts: a second-degree count for assault, a third-degree assault, aggravated harassment, a second-degree harassment charge, which I find very difficult to fathom that he's in court for this. There was some surveillance video or some police body-worn camera video that was shown yesterday that showed Jonathan Majors when he had actually called the police. He called the police because his ex-girlfriend apparently had threatened to kill herself. And him concerned, he calls the police. They come over to his place in Manhattan. And he has a 3-level, I don't know whether it's a penthouse. It's a penthouse. So, you have these three or four white law enforcement officers. They talk to Jonathan Majors. They go through his entire residence, and you can kind of see, obviously he's a wealthy actor, so that he has this very nice spread. And I think in the back of my mind, what I was thinking is, I'll bet you these cops came over and thought, wow, what is he doing with this amazing, a place? And his girlfriend is laying in a very large walk-in closet, his ex-girlfriend, and she's distressed over something. But it all turns out that, in fact, what she's distressed about is that they broke up. And from there, she gets up from this position. You can see on the video she's laying down, but a few moments later she's actually standing up, gathering her things with one of the police officers, and then going away with EMS, and then ends up at Bellevue Hospital I guess under psych evaluation for 3 hours because she was distressed because they were apparently in the course of breaking up. But I found it difficult to believe, quite frankly, that this case ended up in court.
And you know what? That really, for me, Rebecca, jumps out. I mean, the amount of energy being expended on what is a misdemeanor charge.
You know, some of my college buddies and I, we were talking about this in the group chat, especially with sharing the video. Like, Lauren, one of the things that I'm trying to figure out, what was the reaction in the court? Because, you know, not to make too much light of the video, but it was like Jonathan Majors ran from downtown New York to Harlem, then across the bridge to the Bronx, and then down to Brooklyn over in Flatbush. Like, he was running for his life.
He was running like Tom Cruise in a movie.
Yeah, you know, so now this just seems like it is a farce. And we've talked about that prosecutor's office in New York, especially with what appears to be some politically motivated prosecutions. So, Lauren, what was the reaction in court as people were absorbing the judge sustaining and not allowing for certain testimony that indicated that there was violence on his ex-girlfriend's behalf in her previous interactions with Jonathan? What was their reactions when they actually saw the video?
Well, I was actually not in court when that video showed with them running down the street. That was on Monday. So I was in court today and yesterday. But I can tell you that other things that have happened that have blocked the testimony that would greatly benefit Judge Michael Gaffney is really sustaining a lot of objections from the prosecution from Alvin Braggs' office. And there's a lot of looking around in the courtroom. Majors is there with his mother, and I think another lady that sure as hell looks like an aunt, but I can't confirm that, and some other family members, and of course his current girlfriend. And you know, they're not the only ones looking around and thinking, what are we doing here? And also, you can tell that there's some sort of political dynamics here, certainly coming from a good place. We should care about domestic violence. We should care about the Me Too movement. We should care about all of those things and listening to women. But I do think that Alvin Bragg's office greatly overreached on this case. And I do think that if Jonathan Majors, his name was Joe Smith, we just would not be in court with this. He snatched the phone out of his girlfriend's hand. And, you know, maybe her hand was injured from that. Maybe it wasn't. It's actually hard to suss that out. There's also some obvious evidence that he may have been assaulted by her that was blocked by the judge today that would have come out if the police detective had been able to speak on it a little bit more. There was a police detective on the stand today. He just wasn't allowed to really say what needed to be said on that. And so I think Alvin Bragg's office needs to be questioned on this case in a big way. And I get uneasy, too, when I'm sitting in court and I count 10 reporters. All of them are white. The jury is all white except for one person. It's a 6-person jury with 2 alternates. The 8 people are sitting there, plus the 2 alternates, and then there's only one black person on the jury, a black woman. There was a issue with her today, and I don't know what it was. She's juror number 2. But whatever the issue was, it was straightened out. They went to a meeting, came out, and everything proceeded. But I just get a very uneasy feeling. I do think there's a bias, certainly in our justice system, against black men. And I think if he was a white actor, if he was Sean Penn or somebody, this just would not be happening. Nobody can convince me that this would have been brought to this level if he was a white actor. I just cannot believe that. And when I look at the evidence up close, I really can't believe it.
Mignon.
So, in full disclosure, I had absolutely no idea who Jonathan Majors was before today. That's the first thing that I have to.
Girl, where you been?
I don't watch movies. I don't know who he was, but I thought it was hilarious watching him run down the street in this little blonde, like running behind him.
You don't go to movies. You don't watch TV. You don't, Lord.
No, I didn't know who he was. I had to Google while you guys were talking about him real quick because I'm like, who's Jonathan Majors? And I don't know what movies he was in. But
girl, you got that Time Life headset on. How you don't know what is going on?
He's from Dallas, Texas. He's in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He played Kang. Okay.
He was in a critically acclaimed HBO show. Girl, just go on with your question.
Okay. I'm sorry. I don't watch movies. Everyone knows this about me. I can't.
Lord have mercy.
I have movie-induced narcolepsy. Or
Lord
something.
have mercy.
I'm just saying. Anyhow, my point is, obviously, he's a very high-profile fellow because I saw his penthouse, and which was quite impressive. And I do wonder, though. So, I understand the ties to the Me Too movement. I understand that there was this altercation. I understand that him being a high-profile person and a black man certainly contributed to this. But my question, I think, is really about is this about a broader social context where there's like a little bit more of a backlash or a white lash in terms of how we view black men in courts, especially high-profile ones? Or what? I mean, I guess I'm trying to understand more about why did it get to this point. I was listening to everyone speak earlier, and I'm like, why are we talking about this? Why are we talking about this? Why are we talking about? Why is this here? Why is this here? Why is it in the public? Yes, he's a high-profile black man, but what is the underpinning? Obviously, the man was running down the street. The woman was running after him. So that had to have come out to the public at some point. So I guess what purpose would the prosecution have, or the judge, or whoever it is, to push this to such a high level, to escalate it to such a high level?
Well,
what's he trying to prove?
I think as someone who was born in New York and raised in New York, you're talking about a very liberal, very progressive jurisdiction. When we talk about New York and certainly Brooklyn, and really the 5 boroughs, but particularly New York, Manhattan. I think Alvin Bragg is trying to sort of make a political statement by bringing these types of cases where certainly you're prioritizing domestic violence, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I also think the Me Too movement has created a situation where, all of a sudden, like, everything is sort of analyzed to a degree that maybe a little bit much in this particular case. I certainly wouldn't say it for all cases. Every case is different, of course, and certainly sexual violence is a topic that needed to be dealt with since the Bible days, But the problem here is that I think Alvin Bragg is sort of flexing to a certain constituency to get reelected. His staff does not appear to be particularly diverse, even though he's black. The 2 prosecutors that I'm looking at are not, and I think it's a stretch. I think he is trying to virtue signal to a certain constituency, probably white women, and certainly the Me Too movement specifically. And we end up with it as a high-profile case. You have a movie actor involved, and I think that's pretty much the answer to your question.
Got it.
Suzette?
I was going to ask about the racial dynamics at play, but you already took care of that. Thank you, Lauren. So I was going to ask you about what the sentence could be if he's convicted. And I want you to use a little bit of your crystal ball. Looking at the evidence presented, do you think that he may, or even the body language of those in the court room, do you think that he may seek some sort of civil lawsuit against her? Being that, as you said, a lot of the evidence showing that she was, in fact, charged. I think they allowed in that she was arrested, but not, what the charges were, et cetera, in this trial. Do you think there might be a civil lawsuit that he files against her? And what are the actual penalties that he's facing?
I think it was someone told me that it was a year, like a year in jail, up to a year. I frankly think I doubt he would get that if convicted. Frankly, if he gets convicted, I would absolutely be shocked, although the jurisdiction should tell me, yeah, it could happen. What to say here? I frankly think that to some extent this office is trying to make an example of him in terms of, trying to make a statement for, we pay attention to domestic violence. It comes from a good place when you think about that. Certainly, historically women have not been listened to. Certainly there's misogyny historically, but I cannot I cannot look at that evidence in court and believe for 1 second that Jonathan Majors should not be suing everybody in sight after this.
Wow.
It's an over prosecution. I don't know what Alvin Bragg, these progressive prosecutors have always argued that we don't want to over prosecute. We certainly don't want to, go back to the days where we're targeting certain people in certain racial groups that have been over targeted in the historic past. That's exactly what Alvin Bragg is doing in this case. So I really don't understand, again, why we're sitting in court talking about somebody snatching a cell phone out of someone's hand and that raising to the level of a second-degree assault. And then he calls, get this, he calls the police. He calls the ambulance because he's concerned because she's saying she may kill herself after they break up, and perfectly compliant and fine with the officers. And they decide to arrest him in that moment because she's got a swollen finger. I'm just telling you, as somebody who has been in New York a lot, and my dad worked as a cop in the bad 70s and 80s, that this is really an interesting case that was brought to this level.